So this is chapter 7, part 2. Let me pick up where we left off from that array demo 1. I'm going to move to array demo 2 with us. This is on page 452. And one of the things I want to talk to you about in here is, 450 is the array demo 2 for this thing, and how to show you how you process a simple loop with this thing with it. So instead of writing individual statements in this thing, you can start writing a loop how to process this. So the nice thing is when you process it, you can prompt the user storing each one of these elements for the hours with it from 0 to up to 2 in this case with it when it falls out false with this thing. And then you can also process it as an output with it as well. So two ways to process it with it. So that will this wraps up, let's say, how you process. It's very similar how you process the other loops with it as well. How you read it and how you store it out with it. All right. Let me move on to the next one. On page 452, this is very important. I want to point out here. Let me move this out of the way here. On page 452, it talks about BOM checking. And Java has performs arrays bound checking, which means that it does not allow the statement to actually use subscript outside of the range of a valid subscript for that array. For example, if you look at the example on page 452, underneath the figure, right where it has the final int array size is 10, and they declare a new array of values to an array size of 10. And you go inside of this code that I'm about to pull up is the invalid array. Give me a second. I'm going to pause this a second so I can actually pull up that. So this is the invalid subscript.java that's on page 452. If you look at this example in code listing 7-3, you're going to see that you have an array size of 3 for values. You agree? These are ints. So if you look at this, how this loop is being processed, it starts out with 0, and then 0, you plug in 0. Here 0 is less than 4, true. You come in here, you start to index, output this index, which starts here 0, and the value that actually comes across here is first one 0, and then it comes down here, and then you stick 0 into this thing. 0 is assigned to the first one, right? You actually go in, and you're going to process this element in this, and you start to process this. What actually happened is by the time you read, when the program displays, it attempts to store the value of value 3, because you're an increment, you're going to post increment, add 1 to this, becomes 1, less than 4, true, 2, less than 4, 3 is less than 4. However, when you get to 3, what happens? Well, after 3, and you kicks to 4, becomes false. So the issue is that when you actually put an index inside of this thing, and when you actually, to store, you're basically trying to store 4 values in a 3 element array. That's the problem. Okay, so it's going to have an error when you process this thing with it. All right. So we consider this is out of bound. All right. So this is making it way before out of bound than how you process this with it. Okay. The other thing I want to point out in this particular loop is that Java doesn't check to see if it's processing the statement that's executed with this thing. So what's going to happen is when it comes across this error, the program's actually going to throw an exception. It's going to just end it. It's just going to exit out of the loop with this thing. So I recommend if you look at this, you got to be very careful, because it's the Java it's different from C++ that will give you a different error than in the past that you see. But this will process an out of bound error with this as well. Okay, so just FYI with that, just keep that in mind for me. Okay, let me move on to the next part. Let me also talk to you about what's called off by one error with this thing. So it's very easy to be just off by one when you're accessing an array with this thing. So when you look at this array number, all right, you have this number 100, meaning it starts from 0, goes to 99, all right. However, look at this process loop right here. For I is equal to 1 and I is less than or equal to 100, and you're going to actually process this, and you're starting with I is 99, and then inside of this loop is going to be adding 111 to this. Here the problem is that you have an equal sign to show that the loop continues on to 100, where the last index should be what? 99. So you're off basically by 1. This is the problem with this. We call this what's called an array index out of bound exception with this thing. All right. So when you give an array size of 99, and this, to fix this, what should have happened is what? You have, this should be a 0, and remove this right here, this equal sign. So just say I less than 100. All right. So anyways, that's just another one with it. How do you initialize an array? Well, you initialize an array by, you can assign values to it and just put values in there. So this is the first element is what? 0, 1, 2, so on, all the way up to it. So there is an example, the array initialization in here. If you look at the array initialization .java, hold on. In here, if you look at the array initialization, the number of days, they give you here's the month as the constant with this thing. Look at how this is processed with this. This month right here is 12. Index starts at 0, and you're an increment index as it comes across with this thing. Again, element here is what? 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way up, all the way to the end. And that's how you can create initializations with this thing. All right. Let me pick up the next one so we can move along here. Alternative arrays declarations with this thing. So you can previously show how an array has been declared. So you can declare an array by using this syntax. Now you can put this square bracket whether it's before the identifiers or after the identifier. Both of these syntax are equivalent. They're just as good. All right. There are multiple ways you can declare an array at the same line. You can putting a square bracket. All of these are numbers, codes, score with all the same data type as int or ints or int integer. Same thing as you can also put in square brackets after and so on with this thing. So there are some ways you can mess with that syntax a little bit with it. Arrays are objects and provided by public field names length that is a constant and can be tested with it as well. So you have temperature, you have new double is 25, the length of this array is 25 with this thing. So the size of this array is 25. This is important. So if I use this method of dot length right here, temperature, this will assign the temperature inside of this thing as the size with this thing. So with the size, and this is going to return back as 25 because I gave temperature of this size of 25, and now I can return back the size as 25 on this thing. Okay. So really good way how to process array with this. Now I want to talk to you about the for loop, the enhanced for loop in this thing. Is that there is the data type variable, element variable, and the array, and inside of this is the statement. So for example, this is what's called enhanced for loop in this thing. So inside this loop, let's say you have an array of numbers and you have element 0, 1, 2, and you can actually initialize the value and the number, which is the array. This number is this number. So you initialize the value for this thing, and then you can do a syntax of just printing out the output for this thing as well. The next slide is the array size. So let me talk to you about this one, is that you can actually create an array size in this thing. Is use your keyboard, your array that you declare as test, and you can actually put in the int number of tests here, which is this number of tests, it's just this number of tests now assigns to this test with it. So a very similar one that I'm going to have you look at is the display test scores. So this is the display test score in this thing, and you look at how this is created in here. So you get the keyboard object, You got your identifier is your number of tests, and then you have your array is test with this thing right now. This is how you process it. So here's, start with 0, index, the test, that length, what do you think this is going to be? So this test is this test right here. So it assigns in the new number. You create a new array. How you create a new array? Well, you can actually put in, prompt the user, how many tests do you have? You store that in num test, prompts the user, reason that num test is this num test, now assigns to this test. This test now has an array size with a method of what's called .length, which is this right here. That would return a number with it. And after you do this, you can actually prompt and output with it as well. Okay, so this is a really good typical way how you can actually use arrays, how to process an array with this as well with it. Let me pause.